Saturday, November 7th, 1942. Dear Kitty, Mummy is frightfully irritable, and that always seems to herald unpleasantness for me. Is it just chance that Daddy and Mummy never rebuke Margot and that they always drop on me for everything? Yesterday evening, for instance, Margot was reading a book with lovely drawings in it. She got up and went upstairs, put the book down ready to go on with it later. I wasn't doing anything, so picked up the book and started looking at the pictures. Margot came back, saw her book in my hands, wrinkled her forehead and asked for the book back just because I wanted to look a little further on. Margot got more and more angry. Then Mummy joined in. Give the book to Margot. She was reading it, she said. Daddy came into the room. He didn't even know that it was all about, but saw the injured look on Margot's face and promptly dropped on me. I'd like to see what you'd say if Margot ever started looking at one of your books. I gave way at once, laid the book down, and left the room offended, as they thought. It so happened I was neither offended nor cross, just miserable. It wasn't right of Daddy to judge without knowing what the squabble was about. I would have given Margot the book myself, and much more quickly, if Mummy and Daddy hadn't interfered. They took Margot's part at once, as though she were the victim of some great injustice. It's obvious that Mummy would stick up for Margot. She and Margot always do back each other up. I'm so used to that I'm utterly indifferent to both Mummy's jawing and Margot's moods. I love them, but only because they are Mummy and Margot. With Daddy it's different. If he holds Margot up as an example, approves of what she does, praises and caresses her, then something gnaws at me inside, because I adore Daddy. He is the one I look up to. I don't love anyone in the world but him. He doesn't notice that he treats Margot differently from me. Now Margot is just the prettiest, sweetest, most beautiful girl in the world. But all the same I feel I have some right to be taken seriously too. I have always been the dunce, the ne'er-do-well of the family. I've always had to pay double for my deeds, first with the scolding, and then again because of the way my feelings are hurt. Now I'm not satisfied with this apparent favoritism anymore. I want something from Daddy that he is not able to give me. I'm not jealous of Margot, never have been. I don't envy her good looks or her beauty. It is only that I long for Daddy's real love, not only as his child, but for me and myself. I cling to Daddy because it is only through him that I am able to retain the remnant of family feeling. Daddy doesn't understand that I need to give vent to my feelings over Mummy sometimes. He doesn't want to talk about it. He simply avoids anything which might lead to remarks about Mummy's feelings just the same. Mummy and her feelings are something I find harder to bear than anything else. I don't know how to keep it all to myself. I can't always be drawing attention to her untidiness, her sarcasm, and her lack of sweetness. Neither can I believe that I'm always in the wrong. We are exact opposites in everything, so naturally we are bound to run up against each other. I don't pronounce judgment on Mummy's character, for that is something I can't judge. I only look at her as a mother, and she just doesn't succeed in being that to me. I have to be my own mother. I've drawn myself apart from them all. I am my own skipper, and later on I shall see where I come to land. All this comes about particularly because I have in my mind's eye an image of what a perfect mother and wife should be, and in her whom I must call mother, I find no trace of that image. I am always making resolutions not to notice Mummy's bad example. I want to see only the good side of her and to seek in myself what I cannot find in her. But it doesn't work, and the worst of it is that neither Daddy nor Mummy understands this gap in my life, and I blame them for it. I wonder if anyone can ever succeed in making their children absolutely content. Sometimes I believe that God wants to try me, both now and later on. I must become good through my own efforts, without examples and without good advice. Then later on I shall be all the stronger. Who besides me will ever read these letters? From whom but myself shall I get comfort? As I need comforting often, I frequently feel weak and dissatisfied with myself. My shortcomings are too great. I know this, and every day I try to improve myself, again and again. My treatment varies so much. One day and is so sensible and is allowed to know everything, and the next day I hear that and is just a silly little goat who doesn't know anything at all and imagines that she's learned a wonderful lot from books. I'm not a baby or a spoiled darling anymore to be laughed at whatever she does. I have my own views, plans, and ideas, though I can't put them into words yet. Oh, so many things bubble up inside me as I lie in bed, having to put up with people I'm fed up with, who always misinterpret my intentions. That's why in the end, I always come back to my diary. That is where I start and finish, because Kitty is always patient. I'll promise her that I shall persevere, in spite of everything, and find my own way through it all and swallow my tears. I only wish I could see the results already or occasionally receive encouragement from someone who loves me. Don't condemn me. Remember rather that sometimes I too can reach the bursting point. Yours, Anne. Monday, November 9th, 1942. Dear Kitty, yesterday was Peter's birthday. He was 16. He had some nice presents. Among other things, a game of Monopoly, a razor, and a lighter. Not that he smokes much, it's really just for show. The biggest surprise came from Mr. Van Don when, at 1 o'clock, he announced that the British had landed in Tunis, Algiers, Casablanca, and Oran. This is the beginning of the end, everyone was saying, but Churchill, the British Prime Minister, who had probably heard the same thing in England, said, "This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning." Do you see the difference? There is certainly reason for optimism. Stalingrad, the Russian town which they've already been defending for 3 months, still hasn't fallen into German hands. But to return to affairs in our secret den, I must tell you something about our food supply. As you know, we have some real greedy pigs on the top floor. We get our bread from a Nice baker, a friend of Kufuis. We don't get so much as we used to at home, naturally. But it's sufficient. For ration cards have also been bought illegally. Their price is going up all the time. It has now gone up from 27 florins to 33. And all that for a little slip of printed paper. In order to have something in the house that will keep, apart from our 150 tins of vegetables, we have bought 270 pounds of dried peas and beans. They are not all for us, some are for the office people. They are in sacks which hang on hooks in our little passage, inside the hidden door. Owing to the weight of the contents, a few stitches in the sacks bury open. So we decided it would be better to put our winter store in the attic, and Peter was given the job of dragging it all up there. He had managed to get 5 of the 6 sacks upstairs intact, and he was just busy pulling up number 6, when the bottom seam of the sack split and a positive hailstorm of brown beans came pouring down and rattled down the stairs. There were about 50 pounds in the sack, and the noise was enough to waken the dead. Downstairs they thought the old house with all its contents was coming down on them. Thank God there were no strangers in the house. It gave Peter a moment's fright. But he was soon roaring with laughter, especially when he saw me standing at the bottom of the stairs, like a little island in the middle of a sea of beans. I was entirely surrounded up to my ankles in beans. Quickly we started to pick them up. But beans are so slippery and small that they seem to roll into all the possible and impossible corners and holes. Now, every time anyone goes downstairs they bend down once or twice in order to be able to present Mrs. Van Don with a handful of beans. I'd almost forgotten to mention that Daddy is quite better again. Yours, Anne. P.S. The news has just come over the radio that Algiers has fallen. Morocco, Casablanca, and Oran have been in British hands for several days. Now we're waiting for Tunis. Tuesday, November 10th, 1942. Dear Kitty, great news, we want to take in an 8th person. Yes, really. We've always thought that there was quite enough room and food for one more. We were only afraid of giving Kufuis and Crowler more trouble. But now that the appalling stories we hear about Jews are getting even worse. Daddy got hold of the 2 people who had to decide, and they thought it was an excellent plan. It is just as dangerous for 7 as for 8. They said, and quite rightly. When this was settled, we ran through a circle of friends, trying to think of a single person who would fit in well with our family. It wasn't difficult to hit on someone. After Daddy had refused all members of the Van Don family, we chose a mist called Albert Dussel, whose wife was fortunate enough to be out of the country when war broke out. He is known to be quiet, and so far as we and Mr. Van Don can judge from a superficial acquaintance, both families think he is a congenial person. Miep knows him too, so she will be able to make arrangements for him to join us. If he comes, he will have to sleep in my room instead of Margot, who will use the camp bed. Yours, Anne. Thursday, November 12th, 1942. Dear Kitty. Dussel was awfully pleased when Miep told him that she had got a hiding place for him. She urged him to come as soon as possible, preferably Saturday. He thought that this was rather doubtful, since he had to bring his card index up to date first, see to a couple of patients, and settle his accounts. Miep came to us with this news this morning. We thought it was unwise of him to put it off. All these preparations entail explanations to a number of people whom we would rather keep out of it. Miep is going to ask if he can't manage to come on Saturday after all. Dussel said no. Now he is coming on Monday. I must say, I think it's pretty crazy that he doesn't jump at the proposal, whatever it is. If he were to get picked up outside, would he still be able to do his card index, settle his finances, and see to his patients? Why delay then? I think it's stupid of Daddy to have given in. No other news. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, November 17th, 1942. Dear Kitty. Dussel has arrived. All went well. Miep had told him that he must be at a special place in front of the post office at 11 o'clock, where a man would meet him. Dussel was standing at the rendezvous dead on time. Mr. Kufuus, who knows Dussel too, went up to him and told him that the said gentleman could not come, but asked whether he would just go to Miep at the office. Kufuus got into a tram and went back to the office, while Dussel walked in the same direction. At 11:20, Dussel tapped at the office door. Miep helped him off with his coat, so that the yellow star would not be seen, and took him to the private office, where Kufuus engaged him in conversation until the charwoman had gone. Then Miep went upstairs with Dussel under the pretext that the private office was needed for something, opened the swinging cupboard, and stepped inside before the eyes of the dumbfounded Dussel. We all sat around the table upstairs, waiting with coffee and cognac to greet the newcomer. Miep showed him into our sitting room first. He recognized our furniture at once, and had not the remotest idea that we were there, above his head. When Miep told him, he nearly passed out with surprise. But luckily Miep didn't give him much time and took him straight upstairs. Dussel sank into a chair, speechless, and looked at us all for a while, as if he had to really take it all in first. After a while he stuttered, "But, Aber, sind you not in Belgium then? First Milita nicht come, das Auto, the escape is sie nicht successful." We explained everything to him, that we had spread the story about the soldiers and the car on purpose to put people, and especially the Germans, on the wrong track, should they try to find us. Dussel was again struck dumb by such ingenuity, and, when he had explored further our super-practical, exquisite little secret annex, he could do nothing but gaze about him in astonishment. We all had lunch together. Then he had a little nap and joined us for tea, tidied up his things a bit. Miep had brought them beforehand, and began to feel more at home. Especially when he received the following typed secret annex rules van Don product. Prospectus and guide to the secret annex. Special institution as temporary residence for Jews and such like. Open all the year round. Beautiful, quiet, free from woodland surroundings, in the heart of Amsterdam. Can be reached by trams 13 and 17, also by car or bicycle. In special cases also on foot, if the Germans prevent the use of transport. Board and lodging free. Special fat-free diet. Running water in the bathroom, alas, no bath, and down various inside and outside walls. Ample storage room for all types of goods. Oven radio center, direct communication with London, New York, Tel Aviv, and numerous other stations. This appliance is only for residents' use after 6 o'clock in the evening. No stations are forbidden, on the understanding that German stations are only listened to in special cases, such as classical music and the like. Rest hours, 10 o'clock in the evening until 7:30 in the morning. 10:15 on Sundays. Residents may rest during the day, conditions permitting, as the directors indicate. For reasons of public security, rest hours must be strictly observed. Holidays, outside the home, postponed indefinitely. Use of language, speak softly at all times, by order. All civilized languages are permitted, therefore no German. Lessons, 1 written shorthand lesson per week. English, French, mathematics, and history at all times. Small pets special department, Permit is necessary good treatment available, vermin accepted. Mealtimes, breakfast, every day except Sundays and bank holidays, 9 a.m. Sundays and bank holidays, 11:30 a.m. approximately. Lunch, not very big, 1:15 p.m. to 1:45 p.m. Dinner, cold and or hot, no fixed time, depending on the news broadcast. Duties, residents must always be ready to help with office work. Baths, the washtub is available for all residents from 9 a.m. on Sundays. The W.C, kitchen, private office or main office, whichever preferred, are available. Alcoholic beverages, only with doctor's prescription. Yendi. Yours, Anne. Thursday, November 19th, 1942. Dear Kitty. Dussel is a very nice man, just as we had all imagined. Of course, he thought it was all right to share my little room. Quite honestly, I'm not so keen that a stranger should use my things, but one must be prepared to make some sacrifices for a good cause, so I shall make my little offering with a good will. If we can save someone, then everything else is of secondary importance, says Daddy, and he's absolutely right. The first day that Dussel was here, he immediately asked me all sorts of questions. When does the charwoman come? When can one use the bathroom? When is one allowed to use the lavatory? You may laugh, but these things are not so simple in a hiding place. During the day, we mustn't make any noise that might be heard downstairs, and if there is some stranger such as the charwoman, for example, then we have to be extra careful. I explained all this carefully to Dussel. But one thing amazed me, he is very slow on the uptake. He asks everything twice over and still doesn't seem to remember. Perhaps that will wear off in time, and it's only that he's thoroughly upset by the sudden change. Apart from that, all goes well. Dussel has told us a lot about the outside world, which we have missed for so long now. He had very sad news. Countless friends and acquaintances have gone to a terrible fate. Evening after evening, the green and gray army lorries trundle past. File Germans ring at every front door to inquire if there are any Jews king in the house. If there are, then the whole family has to go at once. If they don't find any, they go on to the next house. No one has a chance of evading them unless one goes into hiding. Often, they go around with lists and only ring when they know they can get a good haul. Sometimes they let them off for cash so much per head. It seems like the slave hunts of olden times. But it's certainly no joke. It's much too magic for that. In the evenings when it's dark, I often see rows of good, innocent people accompanied by crying children, walking on, in charge of a couple of these chaps, bullied and knocked about until ties almost drop. No one is spared. Old people, babies, expectant mothers, the sick, each and all join in the march of death. How fortunate we are here, so well cared for and undisturbed. We wouldn't have to worry about all this misery were it not that we are so anxious about all those dear to us whom we can no longer help. I feel wicked sleeping in a warm bed, while my dearest friends have been knocked down or have fallen into a gutter somewhere out in the cold night. I get frightened when I think of close friends who have now been delivered into the hands of the crudest brutes that walk the earth. And all because they are Jews. Yours, Anne. Friday, November 20th, 1942. Dear Kitty. None of us really knows how to take it all. The news about the Jews had not really penetrated through to us until now, and we thought it best to remain as cheerful as possible. Every now and then, when Miep lets out something about what has happened to a friend, Mummy and Mrs. Van Dawn always begin to cry, so Miep thinks it better not to tell us anymore. But Dussel was immediately plied with questions from all sides, and the stories he told us were so gruesome and dreadful that one can't get them out of one's mind. Yet, we shall still have our jokes and tease each other when these horrors have faded a bit in our minds. It won't do us any good, or help those outside, to go on being as gloomy as we are at the moment. And what would be the object of making our secret annex into a secret annex of gloom? Must one keep thinking about those other people, whatever I am doing? And if I want to laugh about something, should I stop myself quickly and feel ashamed that I am cheerful? Ought I then to cry the whole day long? No, that I can't do. Besides, in time this gloom will wear off. Added to this misery there is another, but of a purely personal kind, and it pales into insignificance beside all the wretchedness I've just told you about. Still, I can't refrain from telling you that lately I have begun to feel deserted. I am surrounded by too great a void. I never used to feel like this. My fun and amusements and my girlfriends completely filled my thoughts. Now I either think about unhappy things or about myself. And at long last I have made the discovery that Daddy, although he's such a darling, still cannot take the place of my entire little world of bygone days. But why do I bother you with such foolish things? I'm very ungrateful, Kitty. I know that. But it often makes my head swim if I'm jumped upon too much, and then on top of that have to think about all those other miseries. Yours, Anne. Saturday, November 28th, 1942. Dear Kitty, we have used too much electricity, more than our ration. Result, the utmost economy and the prospect of having it cut off. No light for a fortnight. A pleasant thought, that, but who knows, perhaps it won't happen after all. It's too dark to read in the afternoons after 4 or half past. We pass the time in all sorts of crazy ways, asking riddles, physical training in the dark, talking English and French, criticizing books. But it all begins to pall in the end. Yesterday evening I discovered something new to peer through a powerful pair of field glasses into the lighted rooms of the houses at the back. In the daytime we can't allow even as much as a centimeter's chink to appear between our curtains, but it can't do any harm after dark. I never knew before that neighbors could be such interesting people. At any rate, ours are. I found one couple having a meal, one family was in the act of taking a home movie, and the dentist opposite was just attending to an old lady who was awfully scared. It was always said about Mr. Dussel that he could get on wonderfully with children and that he loved them all. Now he shows himself in his true colors, a stodgy, old-fashioned disciplinarian and preacher of long, drawn-out sermons on manners. As I have the unusual good fortune to share my bedroom, alas, a small one with his lordship, and as I'm generally considered to be the most badly behaved of the 3 young people, I have a lot to put up with and have to pretend to be deaf in order to escape the old, much-repeated tickings off and warnings. All this wouldn't be too bad if he wasn't such a frightful sneak and he didn't pick on Mummy of all people to sneak to every time. When I've already just had a dose from him, Mummy goes over it all again, so I get a gale aft as well as fore. Then, if I'm really lucky, I'm called on to give an account of myself to Mrs. Van Dawn, and then I get a veritable hurricane. Honestly, you needn't think it's easy to be the badly brought-up central figure of a hypercritical family in hiding. When I lie in bed at night and think over the many sins and shortcomings attributed to me, I get so confused by it all that I either laugh or cry. It depends what sort of mood I am in. Then I fall asleep with a stupid feeling of wishing to be different from what I am or from what I want to be, perhaps to behave differently from the way I want to behave, or do behave, oh, heavens above, now I'm getting you in a muddle too. Forgive me, but I don't like crossing things out, and in these days of paper shortage, we are not allowed to throw paper away. Therefore, I can only advise you not to read the last sentence again, and certainly not to try to understand it, because you won't succeed anyhow. Yours, Anne.